She handed me the divorce papers with a smug smile. "You'll always be second," she said. I signed without a sound. What she didn't realize was that I had slipped in one clause she never cared to read. 6 months later, the judge read it aloud in court. Her screams carried down the hallway. "My name's Clayton Dorsey. I'm 54, a senior compliance officer at Berkshire Financial Group in Columbus, Ohio. The job's detailed, stable, and pays well, 6 figures, full benefits. I've been there for 18 years. My wife, Maureen, is 51 and works in marketing for a healthcare tech startup. Polished, confident, knows how to charm a crowd. We met at a barbecue back in 1999. I fell hard for her spark. Our son Owen's 30 now, a software engineer out in Denver. Good kid, calls every week. It was a Thursday evening, my late shift. I got home around 7:30. Maureen was standing at the kitchen island, still in her dark blazer and heels. A manila folder sat between us. She didn't say hello, just pushed it across the counter. "Divorce papers," she said flatly. "I've already signed. You just need to sign pages 7 and 15. I stared at the folder. "What is this?" She sighed, impatient. "Clayton, it's been over for a while. We both know it." I opened it slowly. 20 pages. Asset division. Her name listed on the downtown condo she'd bought last year. "An investment," she said. "You've been planning this?" I asked. "I've been realistic," Maureen replied, heading for the fridge for sparkling water. "Casual. Is there someone else?" I asked. She hesitated, then looked at me with something almost like pity. "You've always been second, Clayton," she said. "Second to my ambitions. Second to what I truly need. This isn't about someone else. It's about me finally putting myself first." That line hit hard. "You've always been second." I picked up the pen and began reading every page carefully, methodically, the way I go through compliance files at work. She lost interest, moved to the living room, scrolling her phone. When I reached page 14, I paused. From my briefcase, I pulled a sheet I'd printed earlier that week, just in case. The formatting matched perfectly, same font, margins, and legal tone. One clause, space for initials. I slipped it between pages 13 and 14. Then I signed 7, 15, and initialed every page, including the one I'd added. I closed the folder and pushed it back. "Done," I said. Maureen walked over, picked it up without looking inside, and smiled. "Thanks for making this easy." She walked out, got into her car, and drove away. I stood in the kitchen, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, control. Because Maureen didn't know it yet, but she'd just signed away more than our marriage. The next morning, before I'd finished half my coffee, I called Gilbert Ross. He's been my attorney for 15 years, handled everything from contracts to estate planning. 60 years old, built like a retired linebacker, with a voice like gravel and a handshake that could bend steel. "Clayton," he said when he answered, "it's 6:30 in the morning. Someone better be dead or getting sued." "Getting divorced," I replied, "and I need you to see something." Silence. Then Gilbert said, "Come to the office." 8 o'clock. I arrived at 7:45, folder in hand. His office sits on the 10th floor of a downtown building. Real wood paneling, the kind that still looks dignified. He poured coffee from a pot older than my marriage and motioned for me to sit. I handed him the folder. "Maureen served me divorce papers yesterday." She signed them without reading beyond the first few pages. Gilbert flipped through slowly, face unreadable. When he hit page 14, the one I'd inserted, he stopped, read it twice, then looked up with something like respect. "You wrote this yourself?" he asked. "Printed it at work," I said. "Matched everything exactly. Font, margins, phrasing." Gilbert leaned back. "Clause says if evidence of infidelity before filing is found, the initiating party forfeits 68% of joint assets, minus mortgages and tax liens." She initialed this? "Every page," I said, "including that one." He set the folder down, fingers steepled. "Do you have proof of infidelity?" I pulled a flash drive from my jacket pocket. 4 months' worth. Messages, photos, hotel receipts, GPS logs. All from her iCloud account, synced to an iPad she gave me last Christmas. She never unlinked it. Gilbert plugged it in, clicking through folders methodically. His expression didn't change. When he finally shut the laptop, he looked at me with a mix of surprise and admiration. "Clayton," he said, "this is the most complete documentation I've seen in 30 years of family law." "Who's the guy?" "Bryn Callahan, I said. Corporate sales trainer. Travels a lot. They met at some healthcare marketing conference last year. Gilbert nodded, jotting notes. Affair started at least 5 months before she filed. Got timestamps, hotel photos, even voice notes where she calls me clueless. Gilbert leaned back, slow smile forming. Then we have everything we need. This clause will stand, Gilbert said. She signed it, initialed it, and the evidence predates her filing by months. What happens next? I asked. Gilbert stood and stared out the window at the city skyline. We'll file a motion to enforce the clause, attach the evidence, and wait for her lawyer to realize just how badly she trapped herself. How long will that take? I asked. 2, maybe 3 weeks. Her attorney will argue it's invalid, that you added it in bad faith. But between the notary's office footage and the fact she had every chance to read what she signed, we're solid. I stood to leave, then stopped. Gilbert, one more thing. Can you dig into Brent Callahan? Employment records, background, anything useful. Gilbert smiled, that slow, confident grin that unsettles opposing counsel. Already started. I walked out of his office feeling something I hadn't in months, hope. 3 days later, I was in my home office when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. Clayton Dorsey, I answered. Mr. Dorsey, this is Yvonne Winters. I'm a friend of Morin's. We need to talk. Yvonne. I knew that name. Morin's closest friend for 2 decades. They'd met at a marketing seminar in the early 2000s, stayed tight ever since. Book club, wine nights, the usual. What about? I asked, keeping my voice even. About what she's doing to you, Yvonne said softly. Can we meet? Somewhere private. An hour later, we sat in a small cafe across town, far from anywhere Morin might show up. Yvonne looked tired, older than I remembered. 50, worked in graphic design, always seemed like the sensible one in Morin's circle. I can't stay silent anymore, Yvonne said, stirring her coffee without drinking. What she's doing is wrong, and I've known for longer than you think. How long? I asked. 8 months, Yvonne said. She met Brent at that healthcare conference in Cleveland last April. Came back talking about him nonstop. At first, I thought it was just a crush. But then she started lying. Girls' weekends that weren't, late meetings that didn't exist. Why tell me this now? I asked. Yvonne met my eyes. Because last week she told me her plan. She's going to take everything in the divorce, move into that condo with Brent, and paint you as the villain. She's already rewriting the story, telling everyone you were controlling and emotionally distant. A cold weight settled in my chest. I was never those things. I know, Yvonne said. That's why I'm here. She's got everyone believing her version, but I saw the truth. I saw how hard you worked to make her happy. The trips you planned. How you supported her business ideas, even when they failed. You don't deserve this. Would you testify to that? I asked. In court, if it comes to that. Yvonne hesitated, then nodded. Yes, I'll tell the truth. When the affair started, what she said, all of it. But, Clayton, there's something else. What? She's been pulling money from your joint accounts. Small withdrawals, nothing that stands out right away, but it adds up. Around $35,000 over the last 4 months. I took out my phone, opened the banking app, started scrolling. Yvonne was right. Cash withdrawals, each under $2,000 to dodge alerts. She's been planning this, I said quietly. Longer than you think, Yvonne replied. A year, maybe more. I'm sorry, Clayton. I should have said something sooner. I looked at this woman who'd been part of our lives for 20 years, finally deciding that loyalty had limits. Thank you for telling me now. Yvonne reached into her purse and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. I wrote everything I remember, dates, places, conversations. Use it however you need. I took it, feeling the weight of it. Gilbert will want to talk to you. I'm ready, she said. Someone has to do what's right. We parted in the parking lot. On the drive home, I called Gilbert and told him everything. Get her on record, he said. Recorded statement, notarized. And, Clayton, check your other accounts. If she skimmed 35 grand, there's probably more. That evening, I combed through every financial record we had. By midnight, I'd found another 18,000 in irregular transfers. Morin hadn't just betrayed me, she'd been stealing from me. Saturday morning, Owen called. His voice tense. Dad, Mom just called. She says you're being unreasonable about the divorce. I was in the garage, sorting tools I hadn't touched in months, Something to keep my hands busy. What exactly did she say? She says you're trying to punish her for wanting freedom, Owen said. That you've always been controlling, and now you're using money to hurt her. Dad, is that true? I set the wrench down, walked out into the driveway. Owen, I need to tell you something, I said. And I need you to listen before you respond. Okay. Owen spoke carefully. I told him everything. The affair, the secret withdrawals, the divorce she'd rushed through without even reading, the clause she'd signed that would come back to haunt her. My tone stayed calm, factual. I wanted the truth to speak for itself. There was silence on the line. Then Owen said, she'd been cheating for at least 8 months. Probably longer, I replied. I have proof, messages, hotel invoices, witness statements. Who is he? Owen asked, his voice sharper now. Brent Callahan, I said. Corporate trainer. They met at a conference last year. More silence. Then Owen said something I hadn't expected. I need to come home. You don't have to, I told him. I know work's busy. Dad, I'm coming home. I'll be there Tuesday. I'm going to talk to Mom. There was a firmness in his voice that sounded familiar. Owen was my son, and he'd clearly inherited my instinct for when something didn't add up. By Tuesday afternoon, Owen arrived at the house. He was 30 now, looking more like me than Morin with every passing year. Tall, serious, deliberate. We sat in the same living room where she'd handed me divorce papers 3 weeks earlier. Owen had flown in from Denver, taken time off work. He wanted answers. Tell me everything, he said. No half-truths. So I did. I showed him what Gilbert had gathered. The messages from Morin saying, call me clueless. The hotel receipts, Yvonne's statement, the records showing $53,000 in unexplained withdrawals. Owen's jaw tightened as he read. When he was done, he looked at me, not angry with me, but with her. She told me you were the problem, Owen said quietly. That you'd stopped trying, that you were cold and distant. Was I? I asked. Tell me honestly. Owen, did I fail her somehow? He shook his head. You were always there, Dad. Every school event, every holiday, every time something broke, you fixed it. She was always somewhere else. I thought that was just normal. That hit harder than I expected. I'm going to see her tonight, Owen said, standing. And I'm going to tell her exactly what I think. You don't have to take sides, I said. He looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, resolve. Yeah, I do. And I already have. That evening, he went to Morin's condo downtown. I didn't go. Some conversations needed to happen without me there. He came back 2 hours later, face flushed, hands trembling slightly. She denied everything at first, Owen said. Then, when I showed her the evidence, she tried to justify it. Said she deserved happiness. Said you never understood her. What did you say? I asked. Owen met my eyes. I told her I don't recognize her anymore. And until she owns what she's done, I don't want to hear from her. Something cracked inside my chest. Not because I wanted him to cut her off, but because my son had just shown more integrity than his mother had in years. Thank you, I said quietly. Don't thank me, he replied. I'm just standing up for what's right. That night, Owen slept in his old room, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. The next Wednesday, Gilbert called while I was reviewing compliance reports. His tone was sharper than usual. Clayton, I found something on Brent Callahan. You'll want to see this in person. An hour later, I sat in his office staring at a manila folder marked confidential, personnel file. Where'd this come from? I asked. Company archives, Gilbert said. Brent Callahan worked at Berkshire Financial 5 years ago. You signed off on his disciplinary review. I opened the file. Memories came rushing back. An internal complaint, 2 junior analysts, inappropriate conduct, late-night mentoring that crossed boundaries. A business trip to Chicago that ended in an unresolved investigation. I remember this, I said quietly. HR tried to bury it. I pushed for termination, but management overruled me. He quit 2 months later. Gilbert leaned forward. Which means Morin knew him. She met him at your office Christmas party that same year. You introduced them. The air in the room seemed to drop a few degrees. She called him slimy back then, Gilbert said. Said he couldn't keep his eyes to himself. And yet here we are. This changes everything, he continued. She didn't just cheat. She chose to be with a man who had a documented record of predatory behavior. I flipped through the pages again, careful wording, legal phrasing, but the pattern was unmistakable. Brent Callahan was a manipulator who preyed on vulnerable women at work. Can we use this? I asked. Absolutely, Gilbert said. If her lawyer calls it a romance, we counter with his record. If they say she was swept off her feet, we prove she knew exactly who he was years ago. I leaned back, letting it all sink in. There's something else, I said. 10 years earlier, Morin had ended a pregnancy. She'd told me it was a miscarriage. Gilbert's face remained unreadable. How did you find out? He asked. I was reviewing old insurance records last week for the asset division, I said. Found the claim codes. It wasn't a miscarriage. It was an elective termination. Were you two trying to have children then? Gilbert asked. We were, I replied quietly. At least, I thought we were. She told me she lost the baby at 8 weeks. I held her while she cried. Took days off work to take care of her. Gilbert jotted a few notes. That won't be admissible in the divorce itself, he said, but it reinforces the pattern: deception, financial theft, infidelity, poor judgment. It all paints a consistent picture. I just want this to end, I said. It will, Gilbert assured me. But be ready. When we walk into that courtroom, she's going to come for you hard. I stood up, hesitated. What are my odds? He peered at me over his glasses. With what we have, 90%, maybe higher. She signed a clause. She filed for divorce while actively involved in an affair. And now we can show a decade of dishonesty. Stepping out into the afternoon sun, I felt something shift inside me. Not satisfaction, but clarity. Morin had built her escape on lies. I was going to take it apart with truth. The first message came just after 11 that night. My phone lit up on the nightstand. Morin, you're making a mistake. Walk away before everyone finds out who you really are. I stared at the screen, fully awake now, then typed back. I'm not afraid of the truth. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Morin, I have evidence of emotional abuse, financial control, isolation. You really want that in court? I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Gilbert with one word: threats. His reply came within minutes. Don't respond. Let her keep digging. But she didn't stop. Over the next hour, 6 more messages came through, each one worse than the last. Claims of secret recordings, screenshots of arguments that never happened, hints about witnesses who didn't exist. I knew it was all bluster. I'd never done any of what she implied. Never controlled her money. Our finances were separate. Never isolated her. She had her own friends, her own schedule, her own life. I didn't even raise my voice. Silence had always been more effective than shouting. At midnight, I called Gilbert. She's unraveling, he said immediately, sounding wide awake. That's what happens when someone realizes they've trapped themselves. She'll threaten, bluff, and push for a reaction. What should I do? I asked. Nothing, he said firmly. Forward everything to me. Don't engage. Tomorrow morning we'll file for electronic harassment and request a freeze on her social media until the hearing. Can we really do that? Judge Hamilton hates games, Gilbert said. Threatening a spouse mid-litigation is about as reckless as it gets. By tomorrow, she won't be allowed to contact you except through her attorney. By 10 the next morning, Gilbert had filed both motions. By 3, the court granted a temporary restraining order. Morin was barred from contacting me directly or mentioning me online. That evening, Gilbert's speakerphone buzzed with her lawyer's voice, sharp with anger. Your client's abusing the system, Carl snapped. Your client was sending threats at 11 p.m., Gilbert said evenly. The judge disagreed with your definition of abuse. This will blow up in your face. Then tell her to stop bluffing, Gilbert replied. Because this will only get worse. The line clicked dead. That night, I checked her social media. Everything was still up, except one deleted post. Gilbert already had the screenshot. It read, "Some people hide behind lawyers when the truth scares them." Posted at 2 o'clock, deleted at 2:30. Too late. Gilbert had already submitted it as evidence of a restraining order violation. Morin had tried to control the story. Instead, she'd given us another win. Later, while sorting through the old storage unit, I noticed something off. The box labeled Dorsey Family Keepsakes felt lighter. I opened it. My grandfather's pocket watch was gone. Gold-plated, engraved with his initials, passed down through 3 generations. Appraised at $15,000, but worth far more than money. The watch was more than valuable. It was irreplaceable. My father gave it to me the day he passed, making me promise that one day it would belong to Owen. I called Owen right away. Did your mother ever mention my grandfather's watch? I asked. The gold one, he said. Yeah. She showed it to me about 6 months ago. Said she was getting it appraised for insurance. My jaw tightened. She'd never told me that. For 2 days, I called every pawn shop, jewelry store, and antique dealer in Columbus. On the third day, I found it, sitting in a display case at a high-end consignment shop downtown. The owner, a man named Richard, checked his records. Sold to us 4 months ago by Moore and Dorsey, he said. We paid her $12,000. I need it back, I told him. That'll cost you 14, he replied. Markup. I paid without hesitation. Every dollar stung, not because of the price, but because of what it meant. Morin had stolen a family heirloom and sold it like it was worthless. When I told Gilbert, his reaction was immediate. We're adding this to the filing, he said. Theft of separate property. That watch was yours before the marriage, which means she had no right to sell it. Can we get the money back? I asked. We can try, Gilbert said. But more importantly, it shows the judge who we're dealing with, someone who'd pawn off her husband's family legacy. That night, I sat holding the watch, feeling its weight. The engraving read, "To William, for 40 years of service, 1952. My grandfather's retirement gift from the railroad, where he spent his life." Morin had sold it to fund her affair. I locked it away in my safe deposit box, where she could never touch it again. Owen called that night. Dad, I heard about the watch. I'm sorry. Not your fault, I said. Still, he said quietly. That was supposed to be mine one day. She knew that. And it will be, I told him. I got it back. It's safe now. There was a long pause. I don't know who she is anymore. Neither do I said. But that's not our burden to carry. The watch was back, but the bond it represented wasn't. Some things, once broken, never truly fit together again. Then Morin's father, Gerald Crane, called me one Tuesday morning. 79, retired history teacher, still sharp as ever. Clayton, he said, voice rough. We need to talk. Not at your house. Somewhere neutral. We met at a park near his apartment. He sat on a bench, cane at his side, looking every one of his years. Morin came to see me last week, he said. Told me you were trying to ruin her financially. Said you'd always been controlling and that she was finally free. I stayed silent. Gerald continued. Then I called Owen. He told me a very different story about an affair, the money, the lies. So now I'm asking you directly, what's the truth? I told him everything. The affair, the hidden withdrawals, the stolen watch, the clause she'd signed, the proof behind it all. Gerald listened without a word. When I finished, he just stared out at the pond. I raised her better than this, he said finally. Her mother and I taught her about integrity, about keeping her word. I don't know where we went wrong. You didn't, I said quietly. People make their own choices. He looked at me with tired eyes. I'm testifying for you. Whatever you need, you have it. My daughter may have forgotten what honor means, but I haven't. Gerald, you don't have to take sides, I said. Yes, I do, he replied firmly. Right and wrong don't change just because it's family. He stood, steadying himself on his cane. You were a good man, Clayton. Good to her, to Owen, to us. What she's done, it's a betrayal of everything I tried to teach her. We shook hands. His grip was still strong. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me, Gerald said. I'm just doing what's right, something my daughter seems to have forgotten. As he walked away, I felt a deep sadness. Not for myself, for Morin. She'd lost her husband, her son's respect, and now her father's trust. All because she couldn't tell the truth. When I told Gilbert, he nodded. Having her own father testify against her? That's devastating. The judge will see exactly who she is. He's a good man, I said. So are you, Gilbert replied. And that's going to count when we stand before that judge. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Pale walls, harsh lights, rows of empty benches. Judge Hamilton sat above us, gray-haired, sharp-eyed, a woman who'd spent decades separating lies from truth. Morin entered in a navy suit, her hair tied back, the picture of the wronged wife. She didn't look at me, didn't glance at Owen in the gallery, just sat beside Carl, her attorney, shuffling papers like this was business as usual. Judge Hamilton called the session to order. We're here regarding the enforcement motion filed by Mr. Dorsey concerning the financial clause in the signed divorce agreement. Carl rose immediately. Your Honor, we contest the validity of this clause. It was added without Mrs. Dorsey's understanding and should be struck. Gilbert stood. Your Honor, we have video evidence from the notary's office showing Mrs. Dorsey reviewing and signing every single page, including the one containing the clause. She had full opportunity to read before signing. The judge nodded. Gilbert played the video. There was Morin, flipping pages, initialing each one, smiling with the notary. Not once did she slow down to actually read. She signed like she was checking items off a grocery list. When the video ended, Judge Hamilton turned to her. Mrs. Dorsey, you signed and initialed this page, correct? I didn't know what I was signing, Morin said, voice trembling. He tricked me. Did anyone stop you from reading the document? The judge asked. No, but did anyone rush you through the process? No, Your Honor, but I trusted. The judge raised her hand. The judge's tone was sharp. You signed a legal document without reading it. That's not fraud, Mrs. Dorsey. That's negligence. Carl tried again. Your Honor, the financial penalty is disproportionate. $217,000 is punitive. Gilbert stood calmly. Permission to submit supporting evidence, Your Honor? For the next hour, he presented everything, piece by piece. The text messages where Morin mocked me as clueless. Hotel receipts proving her affair began 5 months before she filed. Yvonne's sworn statement confirming the timeline. Financial records showing $53,000 in missing funds. Brent Callahan's employment file and disciplinary history. Even the report about the stolen family watch. With every exhibit, Morin's composure cracked a little more. Her hands trembled. She whispered frantically to Carl, whose confidence had visibly drained. Then Gerald Crane, my former father-in-law, took the stand. Leaning on his cane, he spoke with the same commanding voice he'd used teaching history for 40 years. I raised my daughter to respect her vows, Gerald said. What she's done is a betrayal of everything I tried to teach her. Clayton was a good man, and she threw that away out of selfishness. Morin's face went pale. She mouthed, Dad, please. Gerald didn't look at her. He continued, steady and dignified. When he finished, Judge Hamilton quietly reviewed her notes. Then she looked up. The clause is enforceable, she ruled. Mrs. Dorsey signed it willingly. The evidence proves infidelity began before the divorce filing. The financial penalty of $217,814 is therefore upheld and must be paid within 6 months. In addition, Mrs. Dorsey will return the $53,000 taken from joint accounts, as well as $12,000 from the sale of Mr. Dorsey's family heirloom. Morin shot to her feet. This is insane. You can't do this. He manipulated everything. It's not fair. Judge Hamilton's expression hardened. Mrs. Dorsey, you initiated a divorce while maintaining an affair, stole marital assets, and sold your husband's family property. The only manipulation here was yours. The ruling stands. One sharp strike of the gavel echoed through the room. Morin began sobbing, not quiet tears but loud, shaking cries that filled the courtroom. Carl tried to calm her, but she pushed him away. I gathered my folder and turned to leave. As I passed her, I stopped. You once said I'd always be second, I told her softly. Looks like you were first to lose everything. I stepped into the hallway where Owen and Gerald were waiting. Owen placed a hand on my shoulder. No words were needed. It was over. Months later, I stood in my kitchen making coffee, the same kitchen where Morin had once served me divorce papers, but now it felt different. Lighter. The air itself seemed clearer. Owen had moved back to Columbus, working remotely for a Seattle firm, so he could stay close. We had dinner twice a week, talked about life beyond the divorce. He was seeing someone, Rachel, a software designer. Last Sunday, I'd shown her how to make my father's famous chili. The settlement money came in 3 parts, $217,000 from the clause, $53,000 in repayments, and $12,000 for the watch, a total of $282,000. I put half in Owen's name for his future wedding and the rest into a trust for my future grandchildren. Morin sold her downtown condo to pay the judgment. Last I heard, she'd moved into a small suburban apartment. Brent had vanished the moment the ruling was issued, apparently not interested in a woman without a safety net. She reached out to Owen twice. He never replied. Gilbert called recently. Morin's lawyer had filed a final appeal, denied within 48 hours. It's over for good, Gilbert said. She has no legal recourse left. Yvonne stopped by from time to time. Most of her friends had turned their backs after she testified, but she told me she didn't regret it. At least I sleep at night, she said. That's worth more than any book club. Gerald passed away 2 months after the trial. A heart attack, sudden and peaceful. At the funeral, Morin tried to speak to me. I excused myself politely. Some bridges, once burned, aren't worth rebuilding. I sold the old house last month. Too many memories. Bought a smaller place near downtown, closer to Owen. A fresh start. A home that was entirely mine. Work had gone well. I'd been promoted to director of compliance. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent months ensuring Morin faced the consequences of her actions. One quiet Saturday, I took my grandfather's watch from the safe deposit box and sat with it at my kitchen table. The engraving still read, "To William, for 40 years of service." 1952. Owen was coming for dinner. I decided tonight was the night to give him the watch. Not because I was dying, but because he'd earned it. He'd stood for what was right when it would have been easier to stay silent. The doorbell rang. Owen, punctual as ever, stood there with a six-pack and a grin. "Ready to break in that new grill you bought?" he asked. "Born ready," I said. We spent the evening on the back porch, grilling steaks, talking about his upcoming trip with Rachel, and debating whether I should finally try that dating app he kept recommending. Before he left, I handed him the velvet case. "Grandpa's watch," he said, opening it carefully. "Dad, are you sure?" "Never been more sure of anything," I said. "You stood up when it mattered. That's what this watch stands for, integrity. It's yours now." Owen hugged me, something he hadn't done since he was a kid. "Thanks, Dad." After he left, I sat outside watching the sun sink over Columbus. 26 years of marriage behind me. A son who respected me more than ever. A future uncertain, but finally mine to shape. Morin had been right about one thing. I had been second. Second to her deceit, her selfishness, her lack of honor. But I was never second to myself. And that, I realized, was all that truly mattered.